Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon, once a month session of the workshop. I think we call it a workshop, don't we? A work session. Today, we have a special presentation by a new organization, I guess new to Cowlitz County of sorts. Only 2 years? Listen, this is new. The first day I came in here, people were saying, "Oh, that's so and so. I went to school with her mom," and so forth. And okay, so I'm an interloper, I can tell. So it's the Community Mediation Center, and they're going to tell us all about that. And the good news is this is largely for mutual information. Mutual, I mean, for the people in the county as well as the commissioners. We have a mediation center, just like I'll indulge here a little bit, that you're a grandparent now, and at some point they'll be old enough where you know that you're the mediation between the kid, your grandchild, and the parent.
Grandparents spoil. There's no mediation. We just hand them back.
Well, okay, some of us use grandparenting as a mediation. And
None of my grandkids are teenagers by far, so I get it.
so in the audience, we have Judge Basher with us, and welcome, Judge Basher. It's really appreciative having you here, really appreciative having Community Mediation Center here. And if they would, will all three of you be? So there are actually 2 seats and 1 seat, so there are 3. Probably the main speaker would sit in the middle.
Here or here?
Who's the main speaker?
Yeah.
That didn't sound good. What's in there?
My water bottle.
Oh. So proceed, make sure to push that looks like the green light's on the
Yep.
base of the microphone. And
Yep.
then the microphones are very directional, like you can hear me a lot easier this way than if I just am this way.
I'm really loud, so I don't need one.
Well, except you have to be recorded.
Gotcha.
And so that's a reminder to people, this will be on the county website and we are free streaming on a YouTube channel. Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. Kelly has a PowerPoint for us. She's going to put up and hopefully we've shared with you or you can see it on your computer too there. So we're just here to give a quick review of the last 6 months since we've started providing family mediation services here in Cowlitz County as part of a mandatory program with the Superior Court. Tell you a little bit about how that's going and what we have planned for the future. We are relatively new here in Cowlitz County. We've been here for about 2 years, mostly as part of the eviction resolution pilot program through the state of Washington. But we've been providing mediation services in Lewis County since 1993. Okay, just had to double check there, but so for quite a while.
Okay, before you proceed, it's really good for people to recognize that everybody here is a member of the community, your name, and then maybe you introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. My name is Leah Moore and I'm the program manager for Cowlitz County. And then we have Laura Height, who's our assistant director, and Marcia Treadway.
Okay, thank you.
She's a mediator and does a lot of our public relations and outreach work. So the next slide should have just an overview of all the cases that we've opened outside of course, the eviction resolution pilot program. So these are all the mediation cases for the year. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what the universe is? Are you mediating capital crimes or?
No, actually, we'll get there. You're good questions. And
But you're presenting the data already.
yeah. So that's actually just like one more slide.
Okay.
So this is just an overview of the cases we had so far this year, this calendar year, 29 total. And then if you go to the next slide, we'll answer Commissioner Mortensen's questions. What kinds of things are we mediating? So the vast majority of them are parenting plans. So that would be the official plan that parents who are separating and need to make a written plan to co-parent are making. And that can be a very difficult and emotionally fraught process for people. So mediators help those parents to develop a written plan for where kiddos are going to spend their residential time, who's going to make decisions with the kiddos, things like that. We also have mediated 3 neighborhood disputes. So that could be things like a landlord-tenant action that doesn't have to do with rent. It could be just a disagreement between neighbors. You know, you paint your house a really ugly color or something and your neighbor doesn't like it and they want to talk it over. And then other is 3. And I look to see, and actually all 3 of our others have been divorce or marriage dissolutions that weren't parenting plans. So division of assets and things like that. Consumer, we did 1 consumer case so far this year, which was actually a very specific kind of landlord-tenant dispute that didn't fall into the normal landlord-tenant one. And that is that Washington State has some requirements for mobile home parks to have mediation in certain situations. And then facilitation, we did 1 facilitation, and that's a workplace group where you work with people who are having conflict within their workplace. And so more than 2 parties in that, which is why we separate it out and call it a facilitation. Questions about the kinds of cases we saw this year so far?
Yeah. So how do the cases in general, I still need some of that umbrella stuff that says, how do I decide that you're going to help the situation? So I'm your customer, but I don't know that you exist. So
Yeah.
all the inferred answers or implied answers, I should say, from there.
Yeah, so some of our parenting plans, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of our parenting plans have been people who were referred by the courts. Some people just find us via Google, other people through word of mouth. Marcia can talk a little bit more about the outreach that she's been doing to try to get the word out to people that were here and would like to help them. So do you want to do that, Marcia?
Is this where I interject? What it was on the next slide, but I can talk about it now.
Okay, no, let me first interrupt you again. It's a bad habit. I did not
No.
learn that from my colleague. He actually probably gets frustrated with my interruptions, but
No.
I'm always planning ahead. So more specifically, like when you say divorce, we have the court system that tends to handle divorces. What in each of the categories, what is specifically your handle? Why would I not be going to court? What would I be going to you for? And would that, what would be a final result from going through the?
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference between us and court is, well, I'll say one thing. First off, it's the
Is what,
cost.
sorry?
The cost is one big difference. So mediation tends to be a lot more affordable than court and attorneys. And the second big difference is that typically when a case is in court, the parties go and they present their case or their evidence or whatever to the judge, and we have a wonderful one right here, and the judge makes a decision about it. And mediation has a completely different intent. So the intent in mediation is that mediators help establish some ground rules and help people who are in conflict to have a productive conversation and to make their own decision. So it empowers the parties to work through something that may have been something that was contentious or there has a lot of emotional weight or a lot of conflict, but mediators don't arbitrate or make a decision for people at all. They just help them through a process that allows them to make a decision for themselves.
So the end for a successful mediation, then we would, a spouse pair would separate amicably and they would still have to file papers with the court. and the- And the
Absolutely.
judge would still have to decree, but you'd save hours and hours of depositions and other nonsense.
That is definitely our intent. Yes.
Okay. And
And I think an advantage of mediation is if you rely on the legal system, there's a winner and a loser. Mediation has winners on both sides. At least that's the goal.
Yes.
Not always
yes.
perfect, but that happens much more often. So not that judges and the judicial system is bad, but it's designed to make a decision. And
Correct.
somebody's gonna lose, somebody's gonna win. They would prefer, I think, the judges that I've talked to, they would prefer that's this intermediate step to get these things resolved without making them make the decision, because you want both sides to make that decision. So.
Absolutely. You can come explain it.
okay. And then, so there are other situations like the consumer merchant one. Can you talk about how we get into that?
Yeah, so that could be someone who approaches us. It could be a business owner. It could be a customer that says, hey, I have this conflict or a situation I'm unable to resolve satisfactorily. I don't want to go to court. Can you help me? And then we can sit down with both parties and try to help guide them through that process again of reaching a resolution together that works for both of them.
So is the landlord tenant resolution, is that kind of a different program, or did you not have any of those cases this year?
No, it was just it's a different program. And because that was a program that was through the state of Washington, we didn't include it in this number.
Although that's probably a very important element in the referral process, because that's how,
Absolutely.
there were quite a few people that benefited from the service before, and people talk. It's a good
Yes.
service, so.
We've definitely met many local landlords and attorneys and gotten to work with them through the eviction resolution pilot program. So.
So that confuses me. There are multiple programs you're talking about. So how do you know which program we should be involved in?
So you call and you talk to me.
That's a good start.
Yeah. So no, when someone calls our office, we do an intake with them to try to talk to them about what, if mediation is appropriate for them and how it would benefit them and if it's going to work. And the eviction resolution program ended in Washington on June 30th. So we're still kind of feeling our way through that and still working with landlords and tenants who expect those services to be available to them and they're not, and talking to them about what we can do for them.
If somebody came to you today and said, I got a problem with my landlord, I want to work it out, but he's not listening to me, can you help?
Yeah.
So you'd still be able to do that?
Oh, absolutely.
Do that today?
Absolutely. We're still providing those services just before we were able to provide them at no cost. And we still can do that right now. But it just looks a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, ready for the next one? I think.
Wait,
Oh, yeah.
there were other categories, the neighborhood situation. How, can you give me an example or can talk to me about that?
So I believe that all three of those were landlord tenant issues that were not related to payment of rent. So examples would be tenants that have maintenance issues with their landlord, or landlords who have maybe issues with certain behaviors of a tenant that they want to address. They may not think that they'll be successful in an eviction court, so they want to try and work it out in a different way.
Okay. Later on, you'll drill down in each of these.
No.
No.
But I mean, I can't give specifics about certain cases, and when there's so few, it's really
Oh, yeah,
hard
no,
to
no, I-
protect privacy and.
Yeah, I never want
Yeah.
any of that stuff, but I'll wait. I can always ask at the end.
I won't run away before you get every question answered. So the next slide has our outcomes of cases. So of the 29 cases that we had, 11 of them ended in mediation. So that is probably a little less than our typical rate that we have seen in Lewis County, where we've had a longer term program. And the reasons that they didn't go to mediation are listed below. So the first one is a second party refusal. So that's the first party calls and says, hey, I want to mediate this with my neighbor. They've painted their house bright orange. I really hate orange. It's giving me a headache. I'd like to sit down and talk with them about it. And then we contact that second party and say, hey, are you interested in mediating this? And for whatever reason, they refuse. To be perfectly frank, a lot of times that second party refusal happens because they're reaching resolution on their own anyway. But we still try to capture all that and say, here's why mediation didn't happen. So 8 times of the 29, the second party, for whatever reason, didn't want to mediate. And then other, I'm looking to see if I wrote down why the other was there, and I actually didn't look at that ahead of time to see why those others happened. So first party contact lost, someone calls and says, I want to mediate this. And we say, hey, sounds great. We reach out to the second party. They say, yeah, let's do it. And then the first party disappears. Sometimes people work things out and they call us and let us know, hey, we worked it out.
You're not trying to imply that Uncle Luigi took care of things, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And then we have 6 cases that are still in progress. Of our mediations that happened, 7 of 11 of them went to a second session. So that's where we meet with both parties. We talk to them. They work on things and they, for whatever reason, need another session of mediation. And pretty frequently that happens with parenting plans. And I can talk about that a little bit more, but a lot of times things need a little bit of time. Sometimes they need a week for people to think about things or to research some options. Sometimes they need a bit longer. They need a month or so to try things out. A lot of times with parenting plans, people have thought very creatively and they're going to try something new they've never tried before. And we say, hey, let's give this a shot for a couple weeks and then come back in a couple weeks and we'll talk about how it worked and if it's something you want to keep going with. So of the 29 cases we've had so far, 6 of them are still in progress. And that just means they're kind of in that lag time where they're waiting and trying something out and going to come back and meet with the mediators again.
I noticed you didn't include those cases in your pie chart. It wasn't adding up right.
I
So,
don't,
thanks for clarifying that.
any questions about that?
By the way, Judge, if you have any questions, in fact, I might be even outlandish to say there are enough of us here and there are microphones. Feel free to.
Okay. You have to really wave your hands because I can't see you back there. Okay. Okay. So next slide just has some of the metrics for success and progress that we're looking at. So we're tracking the total number of cases opening. We'd like to be opening more cases, and Marcia maybe can talk about that right now and how we're working to increase the number of cases and the number of people we're reaching.
Okay. Well, as she mentioned before, that I am the community liaison and I like to go out and talk to people about who we are and what we do in the community. Many agencies have already heard of us because of a resource event that we had, a resource fair last year. And we were able to introduce ourselves to the community that way. We're still doing that with those who don't know what mediation is. So I go out into the community to anybody and everybody who will listen, because even if somebody says they wouldn't ever need us, they might know of somebody who would need us and they would be able to refer us. So I go to National Night Out. I go to every event and resource fair that's in Cowlitz County so that I can talk to people. We have great information that I hand out to people. Yesterday, I was able to go to the City Hall in Kalama, the City Hall in Castle Rock. I went to the sheriff, Sheriff Thurman, and I explained our program to him. And he asked a lot of questions, was very interested, and took some of the placards, rat cards, and wanted to give them to his deputies, because when I mentioned it could be dispute with neighbors who have an issue with their property lines, he said, I'd like them to take those with them. We have a lot of those that come up. So I know that he wanted more information to have available to his staff and in the office. So if anybody comes into the office, they can refer them to us as well. I was able to talk to Captain Fletcher, and he was just as interested to hear how he could inform his crew to let people know that we're here to help settle disputes. Also, Stacy Michaelbust, she is the
She's a county clerk.
county clerk, and she requested a lot of our rat cards because she wanted to put them in her mailings to a lot of their clients so that they would know who to call when they were trying to settle disagreement. So that is some of what I've been doing, and we're also gearing up to have another resource fair, inviting more of the community so that not only we could explain who we are and what we do and how we could serve their clients, it's a way to network and talk to all of the other agencies that maybe are new and have been around a while, but haven't had that opportunity to share what they do and how they could be useful to us.
Sounds good.
Has the Daily News grabbed onto this and put something in the paper about you?
We have talked about it, but mostly we've been using other means of media that might come up. So it's something that we could invite them. In fact, there was talk when I met with the PUD. I have a crew there that are excited about hosting the resource fair at the PUD event center. So that's where we're going to have it this year, October 3rd, and you're invited.
Okay, this presentation will be on the Cowlitz County website itself. I don't see anybody from the Daily News on, so you may have to send an email and say, why don't you take a look at this?
That's a good idea.
Well,
We can do that.
I have a sneaking suspicion with that regard. If you prepare a press release, they would probably print it. They're staff short, so it's a good opportunity. It's particularly advertising the resource fair.
That's my plan, is to let everyone know. One thing I do want to say, in talking to people and sharing who we are, I was able to talk to a woman, to give you an example, Leah. She had an issue, so for a consumer, she hired somebody to do some work at her house. And because she paid him everything up front and he didn't follow through, she is requesting a mediation with her contractor. I don't know if he'll show up. I don't know what will come of it, but it's an example of consumer mediation that we could certainly do.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, other categories that we're looking at to try to track our progress is really narrowing that time between when we open a case and when it's complete. We want to be providing prompt service to the community, and then accurate monthly reporting to court administration. And so currently we're reporting to court administration the number of cases, the type of cases, and the opening and closing dates for those cases. And then also looking at where our cases are coming from. Are they mostly being referred from the court, or is it community members referring themselves? Next slide has our goals for the first half of the year. So just introducing a mandatory family mediation to Cowlitz County residents, attorneys, and court employees. Establishing accurate and consistent monthly reporting with the court administrator. Increasing our number of cases here in Cowlitz County since it's a brand new program. And then promoting dispute resolution services with Cowlitz County judges for appropriate family cases. And then on the next column is just what we're hoping to accomplish in the last 6 months of the year. So reducing our process time to 30 days or fewer for clients to receive mediation services. And that's something that we're continuing to work with court administration on, getting those referrals or the orders from court in a timely way and being able to reach out to those people quickly so that their case can continue to move through the family law in a timely way. Reviewing with judges the status of the program and getting suggestions for improvement. This definitely is not a replacement in any way for the judicial process that needs to happen in some cases. It's a complement to that. And so we're actively working with the judges on that. Continuing to maintain the increase of cases over the previous year. This is a program that we can see that there's a large need for here in Cowlitz County, and we want to serve people. And just broadening the visibility of mediation services through partnerships with local service organizations, and that's local government and private organizations. Any questions about those?
So I am intrigued with the work that you do with landlord and tenant disputes, that other program.
Absolutely.
With the pandemic funding no longer available, how is that being funded?
I'll let Laura answer that.
So part of that is being funded by hopefully a grant that we have in process with the Cowlitz County Court right now, or the Cowlitz County Commissioners right now. And a small portion, I believe we've requested $56,000 for the year to continue offering that program at no cost to landlords and tenants. That doesn't cover all of the funds that we need. You need a full-time person, and each case is a lot of hands-on work. So we receive some of our funding from the state. We're under an umbrella organization called Resolution Washington, and we're one of 21 centers. And we receive funds from the Department of Commerce. And part of our commitment as a center in accordance with Resolution Washington is we are going to spend a certain percentage of our funds on housing stability. And so we take those funds and they're going toward this program. That is what our county has decided is the most critical need. We already have kind of a running start with ERP. So instead of trying to restart a completely new program that people didn't understand, we're kind of taking out the red tape of ERP and keeping all of the good stuff, which is the communication and the resolution that people create themselves. And that is what our program looks like. So that's where the funding comes from.
Thank you.
At what time, at one point, will you be fleshing out the housing stability that you just mentioned?
Well, we've already presented to you, and I think the contract is still in the works. I've been talking with Gina James about that. So we are actually waiting, I think, from something on your end. I don't know what that process looks like exactly. But we have the presentation, and I can resend it to you if you'd like, but we do have the entire program guide, what it looks like when people start it, how it's different from the ERP process. So I can send all of that to you if you'd like.
Were we looking at some of our doc recording fees as a funding source, because that housing stability and prevention efforts, I think Gina mentioned that was what we originally
Yeah,
talked about.
I'm trying to remember some of the stuff, but I thought key to the issue is let me back up. My ears are always keenly attuned to agencies A, B, C, and D trying to vie for the same thing. When she means stability, and you will stop me or tell me if I'm in error, they're not trying to do any rentals subsidies. They will actually lend the money or use money as part of the mediation, but they will require it to be paid back. So they may do a bridge of some kind.
So I believe that was one of the ideas that was floated out there, and the money that we're asking for and that has been approved is not to loan to people to help with rent. There are other associations out there that are currently doing that. I know the federal funding through COVID is gone, but there are other funds available through churches and other social organizations. I'm sure you are familiar. So we are not going to become another avenue for funds to get to people. Our role is to keep folks in their home. And a lot of times that just comes down to communication. People are afraid to talk to their landlords or authority if they feel like they're going to be getting in trouble. It really comes down to getting two people in the same room to talk about it. A lot of times people do have the money, but they have a leaky sink that needs to be fixed. And so they are withholding those funds. And it doesn't have to do with a lack of money in every case, but a lack of that money getting to the landlord. And how can we sort that out? How can they see eye to eye and realize that they can't rewrite their lease contracts just because they have some repairs that need to be done? So we are there to help keep people in their homes. Or another thing that is very popular with landlords is helping people with a move out plan. Sometimes there is no realistic way to keep people in their home, but it's very difficult for people to have an exit plan, and moving is expensive. They may not know exactly where they're headed next. And we will sit down and work with the landlords and tenants to say, if you can accept X number of dollars, they can be out by this day, they can have your keys back by this week, and sort of sort out that nitty gritty that can really be intimidating to people. So they do not have an eviction on their record, and the landlord is not left, holding the bag for the entire rental amount. And that's something that landlords have found to be a useful part of mediation, is to use that as well.
Okay, clearly I was confused. But when you say housing stability, all kinds of images arise. I look at what you just described as just part of a, let me call it, a common sense mediation. You can get two parties together and say, you can achieve what you need if you give here such that this person. So any funding you receive is actually paying for your time and expertise. It's not paying for anything else, office supplies or something.
No, correct. It's for staff. And then we offer that at no charge to the landlords and tenants. Obviously, if people aren't paying their rent, they don't have the finances to pay for anything else. So we realize that if we can get funding from the county, people will actually use our services, because even $100 can be prohibitive to people using it. And we really don't want money to stand in the way of people using our services.
Yeah, that I mean, there's a thing to discuss always when you're asking the public to pay for the benefit of one or two people, or one party and another party. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to do or anything like that. I'm just saying it's not quite as simple as it sounds. When you want to give something for free, usually that turns out to give something not so good in the long run. But don't interpret that as me saying no or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that. But you giving them value for service, and it's be good for you to identify to them what the value is, and actually even keep a mental note for yourself. I saved the landlord, I saved her $1,000, and I saved these people their reputation or something like that, and might keep a note that that's what the savings were to the public. And eventually we want to tie a value to that. So if you get $100 from us and you say we got $30 worth of value out of it, we're not going to be happy campers. But if you say you got $1,000 worth of value out of that, then we're happy campers. Am I saying that adequately?
Well, that's certainly one way to look at it. I am curious, you have some goals of 100% increase every 6 months. So I'm assuming by the end of the year, you'll have had 60 cases. I mean, that's another goal. The resolution is always complicated because it takes two to agree, and sometimes party will walk away and say, I'm not going to pay any attention anymore. with regards to the housing assistance, I know that sometimes the terminology gets in the way. There are other programs that talk about housing readiness and housing retention. And I think you're focusing on the housing retention. What can you do to keep people in their homes to avoid being evicted and to work out the difficulties? And I think I'm more than willing to say that if we could play a pretty modest role, particularly with funds with which we're supposed to address affordable housing and homelessness. I think that's something, yeah, I'm certainly open to being supportive of that. It just, as to use Arn's term, it's common sense, getting people to work agreements out.
Yeah,
There's a process, so, and you're helpful with the process, and it certainly, the more we can reduce the animosity that is apparent in the courtroom, judges are able to handle more cases and, dispense justice better. So a good mediation program, I think, is a win-win all the way around.
yeah, the way I see it, we've got lots of agencies to help, but we don't really have an agency that says, have a seat. We're going to help you talk to each other. We're going to help you understand the other person's position. We really don't have that. And as simple as that sounds, simple as drug court sounds, there's some very valuable things in the communication. And that is worth quite a bit in my book. So your knowledge of other funding mechanisms is helpful. It's part of your toolbox, but your main thrust, I think, is communication and understanding. The language I might use, well, you've heard us discuss. No, I didn't mean that. And you really want to bridge all that. And that always takes a neutral party. And am I correct in saying that's really what the mediation is about? You don't take sides. This is not a bad guy here and a good guy here.
That's correct.
Okay.
We can go to the next slide.
Oh, actually, just an Arn kind of quip on the previous slide.
Absolutely.
Introduce mandatory. That always seems a bit like strange.
So just,
I mean, it's
In
mandatory,
Lewis
so you're going to
County for
introduce it to me
many
whether I
years,
like it or not.
they'd had a mandatory family mediation program where pretty much almost every case that went to family court had mandatory mediation before a judge would look at a parenting plan. And before January of 2023, we did not have anything like that in Cowlitz County. So just getting the judges, the attorneys, everyone kind of on board with the
I
idea
see
that,
what you
that
mean.
we
Okay.
would, in some cases, people would have to come to mediation before they could move forward with their dissolution or divorce or parenting plan.
That's the kind of mandate you could go with.
Yeah, usually my mom didn't introduce me to mandatory things. She just mandated.
She just mandated. And there is a mechanism in place through the court if people feel that mediation isn't appropriate for them, that they can ask to not do mediation. So next slide, a little bit about the highlights of our program. We had 8 parenting plans completed and agreed on during mediation sessions in Cowlitz County so far this year. I have to be honest, it felt like a lot more than 8, but I also like to think of that as there were 8 trials that were avoided and all of the hearings and different actions that lead up to those trials that were avoided by having those people engage in mediation. Not only the money saved by that, but just the fact that mediation is a very empowering experience typically. So we bring together parents who are talking about their children, which is for all of us our most precious thing, and have them realize that they are both really on the same page about parenting their children. They all want what's best for their children, empowering them to make decisions and to come to agreements about their co-parenting relationship is a very, very powerful thing. And that's something that you don't necessarily get in court when you just have someone who makes a decision for them. And so that's what we're most excited about. We would love to be part of helping clear some of the congestion in the courts also. So just compared to the same time, we only opened 6 total cases in 2022 here in Cowlitz County. So we also were able to give some mediation presentations to the Lower Columbia Bar Association and the GAL groups, both of which are groups that we're very excited to work alongside. Our intent is never to replace attorneys or the GALs. They all have very important roles to play, but just to work alongside those groups when it's appropriate. And then we had 2 additional staff members certified as family mediators so far this year, which will help as we pick up more volume. We need those certified mediators. Our organization is made up of staff mediators and also volunteer mediators. And that's a really great combination of experience and commitment for different people because it provides a lot of different perspectives, which is good during mediation. Not on here, but I wanted to talk about it because we talked a little bit about costs, and in parenting plans specifically, there is a cost to people. That cost, depending on the nature of the mediation, it's very hard to say whether or not the cost actually covers the entire cost of mediation, because a mediation could be 1 hour long and it could end up being 4 or 5 hours long in total. And if it has volunteers mediating it or staff members mediating it, there could be different costs involved. But we do ask that both parties pay. We offer a sliding scale so they can submit information to us and we'll provide them a reduced cost. But it is really important that both parties are contributing financially to it, because I think it offers some buy-in for them and that they have some skin in the game. So that is part of what happens in family mediation.
So this is a parenting plan between the father and the mother?
Mhm.
And are the children ever involved?
Not in mediation, no.
So you don't mediate between the parents and the kids?
We can do that, but not in parenting plans.
I'm sorry, you can or
We
cannot?
can do that. So we're actually exploring, offering and working on some parent-child mediation. So, and Laura is the most interested in that. So I defer to her, but mediating, definitely family mediations is an area of need for a lot of families, either mediating between parents and especially teenage children, or between intergenerational, so between adults and their parents who might have issues that are causing conflict in their family.
You see, Dennis, we're gonna have to be careful. They'll replace us grandparents.
I was just gonna say, I don't see mediating between grandparents and grandkids. I see mediating between grandparents and
Parents.
parents
Oh, yeah, exactly.
about that spoiling.
So between parents and kids, the grandparent is a mediator,
Maybe.
at least in my experience.
So you mentioned the parenting plan, and that's a pretty significant focus of your whole program. I think it was 22 cases. I can't remember that one of the early charts had about 47%.
I just looked, yeah. So we had 21 parenting plans. We did intake for 21 people who were interested in parenting plans.
So that just raises to my mind, what can be done to, well, first off, is that an adequate number? Is that meeting the need for mediation in family disputes? My hunch is we have a lot more families collapsing and going through struggles like that. So, so then it would be, if it's helping, how can we increase the numbers that benefit from your service? Are you already at capacity? You can't handle anymore, or how do we do that? And what can the judges play a role in that, or Or is it just left up to PR stuff?
No, we're actively working with court administration and the judges. I feel bad that I have my back to Judge Basher, but we're actively working with them to make sure that we're getting orders, transferring to mediation, the cases that are appropriate and could benefit from mediation. And I think that just benefits the court and it will help. And there's definitely some kinks in that system that we're still working out just because it's so new to everyone here in Cowlitz County. And we have the capacity to do quite a bit more. We're very lucky that we have a nimble staff, I'll say, that are willing to do more and are ready to do more when they're needed. And the same goes for our volunteers. So we can do more and we're excited to do more, and we can see in family court the need for more mediation.
I was impressed that you've made presentations to the guardian ad litem group because they also provide such an important function in the role of helping families resolve their disputes. But they're not mediators. They're fact gatherers from what I understand, and that report to the judge. So do you come before or after that guardians get involved, or are you working alongside them, or you walk separate paths?
So you're right in that we definitely serve different needs. One of the great parts about mediation is it's completely confidential with very, very few exceptions. So nothing that's said in mediation gets reported. We make sure that people know it's a very safe place to throw anything out there. There's no reports written or given, and we can't be subpoenaed, before a judge. So we are different in that we definitely work in tandem with the guardian ad litems in that we offer very different services. Not every case needs a guardian ad litem. We work especially well when parents have some level of civility or some level of communication. When things are incredibly contentious, when accusations of criminal behavior are involved, those are the types of things that are moving further and further away from being appropriate for mediation. So there are domestic violence situations that we do not handle because they're not right for mediation. So in some cases, we will work at the same time as a guardian ad litem. At sometimes we will work cases where they're not involved at all.
Sad to say that ends up being a considerable limitation for you, because I understand domestic violence is a big factor in a lot of those cases, sadly.
Any other questions?
The guardian ad litem is a service for people who are legally responsible for themselves, right? It's for kids.
Correct, I believe so.
Okay. It wasn't clear from the discussion, but so
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, I want to go back to one thing that you said. How can we increase the volume of cases? And so you saw in there that this time last year, when we were not actively promoting or doing mandatory family mediation in Cowlitz County, we had 6 cases. So we get started and we have 29 in that same period. I think that's a fantastic incremental increase. We want to, like you said, double that for the next 6 months. We're not expecting that for every 6 months. We don't want the community to be in that much need. But I will say that, and I don't want to be competitive, but we do also serve Lewis County, and they have an established program. Their court and our center work very well together. And Jane, who is our community program manager up there, she's opened over 100 cases in Lewis County, and they are a smaller county by population. I know that we can do at least that many. So numbers are not our ultimate goal. We want to meet the need that is there, but I know that we have the capacity to do, I would say, at least as many as they do in a 6-month period. So that's what we're looking for. The one thing that I can see for sure that we can improve here is the communication between the information that the judges have through the court administrators to our center. This is a new program for everybody. There are a lot of programs out there and we all use similar terminology. It can be incredibly confusing for everyone, especially people caught in the middle. They don't know what they're supposed to do. So we would like to see it improve the same way that the guardian ad litems are assigned to cases and then they are communicated to by the court. that system seems to be working very well, and we would like to get on that same sort of information flow. So that way we can be responding as quick as they're ready for us. We don't want someone to hear, I didn't know who to call, I didn't know where to go, I didn't know that was my responsibility. We want to make sure that the system is seamless from our point of view. So all people have to do is make those phone calls and show up. So that's something that we're working toward improving.
I think I might add, there may be a sense that you've got to prove yourself overnight, and I certainly don't feel that. This kind of thing is something best viewed with 3 years of history, and I may be speaking too soon, but my feeling is human things take a lot longer than you thought. And so I wouldn't want to be making a judgment call on your success for quite a while.
Well, you're stuck with me every 6 months because our contract says we have to update you every 6 months. But so I'll be happy though to come in 2.5 years though, and we'll see
No,
where-
No, I'm
you
okay with the 6
misunderstand.
months check-in.
You misunderstood that, or if you meant that,
No.
part of this is so the whole public gets a little view, but it's also for you to see the kinds of questions you will face from us. Doesn't need to be an answer tomorrow kind of thing is all I'm saying. And giving us updates every 6 months. Well, I can't remember anything too much. So every 6 months, you'll have to reintroduce yourselves and oh yeah, I remember that was an 06, right? So this is building the base up.
Absolutely. And we do see a huge need in our community and we want to fill that. So
I am absolutely curious as to what ideas Judge Basher might have listening to this. I know he's been communicating with you and talking to you. And if you don't mind, what kind of a percentage of the need is being met with what they've been able to do right now? That's ballpark per year. Are we like 90% or closer to 20%? Yeah, you. You're here. Well, I see you as the one with the experience in dealing with family court cases.
Well, first off, I didn't learn about this meeting until I finished my trial about 5. I think I got an email from Commissioner Mortensen. Just so I don't have data for you. I'll just express right up front. I don't have any numbers to
Okay.
give you right now, but I do want to give just a little background, a little history of how we got here. First off, and I don't know, this isn't a widely known fact, but in I think 2007, I was certified as a mediator by the National Judicial College down in Nevada. And I did that as part of our mandatory settlement conference program for here. It was a special training for judges. It's a little different than what these folks do. Very similar concepts and use all the same tools. So I'm very familiar with what they do. It's a little easier when you do it as a judge than when you do it as a mediator, because there's a certain level of persuasion that you have available, because you can say, well, if you go to court, this is not going to happen.
Mhm.
And that's a useful tool that isn't available to the mediators quite the same way. I'm a big fan of mediation. The judges have been talking about a mediation program and having that available in family court for, I would say, 10 years at least. We did not go down that road for a very long time because we didn't have a local resource. And we didn't want people to have to travel to Lewis County or Clark County or somewhere else. We didn't have anybody here. So when we saw the ERPP program came in, and this is not I'm not promoting that program by any means, but that gave us an opportunity for the Lewis County Center to establish a local office here. It helped get that funding, get that going, get their name out in the community. And we saw that as an opportunity for us to kind of get on the heel behind that. So we're supportive of the program. There's a little pushback, I think, from some of the lawyers, and I think there's a perception that there's a lot of reasons for it. Some of them valid, some of them are just, I think, lack of information.
Could you be more more detail on that? There's pushback from some of the lawyers.
I would say some lawyers, because the perception is that they don't want their client to go in and agree to something that may not be in their best legal interest or be part of a bigger picture on their case. And so lawyers have a certain, they want to manage the case, and when a piece of it gets parsed out, they don't want that happening without them understanding what's going on, or their client agreeing to something that either they shouldn't agree to in some cases. And those things can happen. So I mean, some of their concerns are legitimate. Some of them, I think, are just because they're not familiar with the programs. Mediation is pretty widely used all over the country. So it's really getting our folks into that. The one, and I know you love anecdotal information, so I'm going to give you some. The first trial assignment docket I had after we passed the mediation rule, which would have been the first of the year, I'm assigning for trials, and I had two couples who were getting a dissolution, had kids, and they wanted to set a trial date. And they heard me mention the mediation program to an earlier case, and they both said, we're kind of interested in that mediation. Can you tell us more about it? And this was before any information had gone out publicly, really, that we were doing this. So we referred to mediation. And I don't know if they were successful or not, because I don't handle those cases all the way through often. But what I do know is that I'm not getting negative feedback from anybody that I've heard about what's happening. We are sending a lot of cases, I think, are going over, not as many as we'd like. There are a lot of cases that we realistically cannot send, domestic violence cases for one. There are some cases where the lawyers will bring in other issues that they believe, and sometimes we approve those, sometimes we don't. So that's kind of how the process works. And as you're all aware, we have newly promoted staff in our office, and we're still juggling around trying to get everything working. We had a lot of changeover, frankly, and working. This is a new program. And when we came up with the ERPP program, that was done through the state generally. So a lot of that was put together. For our court, I pretty much managed that whole process myself because we didn't have staffing to do it. So that we put that together in conjunction with Lewis County, worked with Judge Lawler. And we basically tried to coordinate our processes because it was the same mediation group working. We wanted to keep it as simple as we could. That process, I think, was fairly phenomenally successful. In great deal, and the success came the fact there was money available to help landlords get paid back. I mean, that was a big feature. But it was very successful. Cowlitz County was, I think, one of the longest lived programs in the state because we had funding longer because we were able to manage that apparently better than some other counties that ran out real early. So we had a pretty successful program. So I'm optimistic this will continue on in other realms. So that's what I can tell you. We're supportive of the program. All the judges are in favor of it. And we're working on our end as we can to increase the referrals that come through.
Great.
Hopefully that word will, as you're indicating, it's a new program and it takes a while for the word to get out. I know that you folks are doing a ton of stuff. I go to different community events. They've got tables set up. They're getting the word out. So we're pleased.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
One other question, there was a guardian ad litem question came up.
Yeah.
I'll flesh that out a little bit. Guardians and guardian ad litems are real technical terms of art in the legal profession. And guardian ad litem in this juncture is a person who investigates and reports to the court having to do with child custody and those types of things. Guardian ad litems also serve in adult guardianships. They go out, and they're actually called court visitors now because of the changes in the law that happened a couple of years ago. A guardian is a separate kind of thing. That's somebody appointed by a court to manage somebody's affairs. So there's lots of different terminology. Some of it we're still getting used to because the legislature passed the Uniform Guardianship Act that where we share with Maine as the only two states that have the Uniform Guardianship Act. That's another long story. The other comment I do want to make, and I think this goes to why we think this is, why I personally think it's important, is because court's a really scary place. I don't think I'm scary, but you come into a courtroom, you don't know what's going to happen. The language is different. Everybody talks kind of in hushed tones. It's a very strange environment for people.
I just noticed that you're mostly chopped bilaterally. Could you tilt the,
Oh,
oh,
you don't want to look at my ear?
it's easier to move the laptop.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. That's okay. I don't need to be on screen. I think when you get people that come into court, with the exception of adoptions and name changes, most people who come into my courtroom, it's the worst day of their life. And they're not thinking well, they're not organized, they're worried about whatever is right in front of them at the moment. Following through on processes like this is really challenging. And we have that same with guardian ad litem programs. We have it with everything. So,
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah, that ties into the question that just come to mind. Again, I'm going to throw out what I think is the case, and you straighten this all out. The Superior Court has no control over these people.
None
It's
whatsoever.
an independent agency.
Other than we will refer them people,
Right.
then it's out of our hands.
You use them as a vendor, sort of.
It is, and we like to look at, when cases come in, we look at essentially off-ramps, ways to get cases
Yeah.
resolved, and that's a resource to help us resolve
Right.
cases. One of the things that you find is when people go to mediation and are successful at it, it's kind of the getting people to say yes. When people are successful in mediation, they tend to be less contentious in the rest of their case, so it hopefully helps the rest of the thing. So it's sort of moving in a good direction.
Yeah, then along those lines, would you agree that in the most outlandish successful scenario, the people who might have appeared before you don't ever appear before you? They come and talk to the mediation center and then go away and think, we can handle this. We don't need to get the judge to throw a hammer at us or anything like that.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
think
One of the things when you get people, unfortunately, when people come in and I tell them this is what your parenting plan, your visitation schedule is going to be, they tend to be very stuck on that and unable to actually work with themselves, between themselves, to do something different when they need to trade Christmas or whatever. One of the things I try and tell people is that, this is what we're going to enforce, but you can agree to do anything you want. People are scared when they get a court order. So if they can negotiate out the terms of that, I tend to think they will follow it better and have a little bit more flexibility, because you need that when you're trying to parent kids.
Yeah, and because of what you said, going to court, it'll be your worst day, and more likely. I think the mediation center has to identify itself in a way such that they don't chase people away thinking it's just an arm of the court.
They're not really an arm of the court. They're an independent agency that provides a service to the public that we benefit from if they're successful.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting to them that they sell themselves as a problem solver.
So, other questions?
You want more questions?
Anymore.
You're going to get up and you're going to ask me a question, so I'm just giving you the opportunity now.
Was it your motorcycle in the basement, the Hall of Justice this morning?
Yes, it was. I ride that every day.
I didn't realize you drove a Honda Hog.
That's a Magna. It's one of many. It's a bad habit I have.
How's the vibration?
Not bad at all. It's very smooth.
Oh.
I rode it to Olympia for a
it's
meeting yesterday, so.
If you didn't know any better, and I don't, except I can read, it says Honda. It could have been a Harley in the sense of the
It looks sort of,
configuration.
yeah, it looks
Yeah.
similar. It's faster though.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So I guess that means, Marcia, you're gonna have to learn to ride a.
Oh, please, don't even go
You can ride on the back. It'll be fine.
Okay, I think that was everything we had. I did want to say thank you, and especially thank you to Judge Basher for being here today, but also for his support of mediation in Cowlitz County. We do feel it's a really important path that is appropriate for some people in some situations, and we're excited to grow it here in Cowlitz County.
Tell me a little bit again, where do we, you're sending in a proposal for funding.
For
Are you
housing
talking about housing now?
No, we're talking about mediation center.
So the contract for the family mediation, which is the program that we're talking about, has already been approved starting back in January. So for that program, we are receiving $40,000 annually, which pays for part of the program. But as you can add up the hours and the staffing, we also fund that with money from the state as well to pay for that. So the county is contributing, and we definitely appreciate that. And so we're happy with the contract that we have.
Okay, but I thought you said there was another one you'd submitted and Gina James is looking at that?
Yes, so that's the one for housing stability. So that is
Housing retention.
housing. It says housing stability on my paperwork, so I have to go with that. If there was a common sense grant, we would have applied for that. Yeah, so if you want to follow up with Gina James, that is a separate program, and that is the replacement for the ERP program. We are offering it at no cost, and that just started July 1st. That is just a baby program that we are starting. So more information and more data to come
Where
on
does
that.
the money go if you get that?
If we get that, I can send you our proposal. It goes, a small amount goes to supplies and rent, and the rest of it goes to the salary of the person. We actually have 2 part-time people that we have retained from the ERP program, and they work that program in tandem, and we have them for the year.
But it's mediation. It isn't a subsidy to the landlord. I mean, that's
Yes,
not what you're.
yes,
doing.
we are not middlemen for any sort of finances.
Looking for, yeah.
Yep, he knows what I'm looking for. Okay, but that, the staff is going to be under the mediation center, right? And that would mean I would be speaking to the 3 of you at some point about
Yes,
this.
we have a program manager, Lisa Gaynor, who's in charge of our housing stability program / retention program. And if we did a presentation on a 6-month update, she would be here to present with you in lieu of Leah, because she's the family program.
Yeah, so I think I understand, but then I go to, why are you separating this out? I mean, it's almost as if it's not the mediation center. It's like, oh, it's this other program. It's housing stability. It's really mediation, isn't it?
Yes, it's all mediation. We use a lot of the
Yeah,
same
it's-
tools.
Yeah, they should call it mediation, housing mediation.
Imagine if you're going to the bank and you're getting a loan for a jet ski or a house. They're very different processes, but you're still getting a loan from the bank, and they're using the same similar tools. They run a credit check, all that kind of stuff. They look very different and the outcome is different, but they're both loans. And so you could consider mediation that way. It's a lot of the same processes, but sometimes we're dealing with people regarding rent. Sometimes we're dealing with them parenting plans.
Okay, I got to admit that analogy didn't do much for me. But anyhow, is this bluntly, this is a way does that imply to us that that was my back, I'm sorry, a different pot of money?
For the housing stability
Yeah,
program? Yes, I
Okay.
think definitely. Because the other one is the family mediation is a gift that actually goes through the courts, right? You get the money from us and then it's
Yes, I believe that we
Don't.
are part of the court's budget for the family mediation, and the money that we're receiving is not directly from the county. It's my understanding that it is a grant that the county has received that we are taking a small portion of.
I don't remember that, but
I
We
think it's
will
money.
talk to the staff expert,
Yeah.
Gina. And she'll straighten this out.
I of all the commissioners has the least interest because money is fungible. And so I don't understand a lot of these pots, but some of the pots of money we have legal restrictions on them and we must
Absolutely.
abide by them. So I think what we've done, because I remember the 40,000 you said it was?
For family.
Yeah, and I had thought that was woefully low.
It is.
Uh, but that actually goes through the courts to you?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
and I think,
that grants you a free ride on the back of the motorcycle.
at one time, we talked about whether or not the family mediation could be funded from housing support.
Right.
That was part of the conversation, but it sounds like there's a different grant that came through that we qualified for. That
Yeah.
Jeannie can
Yeah.
get us back on the straight and narrow on that.
And how much is this grant, this request for?
The request for the housing stability / retention program,
Yes,
I believe that's about $64,000 for the year.
For a year.
Yes, for 12 months.
why is that so much more than the other one?
Because the funding that we receive from the state, the majority of that funding, just like you saw, the largest piece of the pie is for family mediations and parenting plans. That's the same across the state for most mediation centers. So we already receive the bulk of our money that we need to continue that program without the $40,000. It is helpful. It allows us to keep and train the appropriate staff. But without the finances for the other housing program, we would not be able to have enough money from the state to run both of those. We would have to make a decision.
It's good to know.
That's a good answer, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and your.
Don't go away, just let me have final check. I don't see any hands up. The clerk of the board always has no questions. Oh, good predictor here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. According to the schedule, we have citizen comments, so we've already addressed that. And I don't think we have an executive.
We're just waiting
session.
for Carol to raise her hand for something.
Will she?
I
She's
will.
welcome to.
I said that just to acknowledge that we know you're watching, Carol.
No, I'll correct you. You know, she logged in. We think she's watching us.
I'll probably find out later.
Yeah. Hi, Carol. So we have no executive session. Let me say the upcoming work sessions, Wednesday, that's next Wednesday, right? We have the regional airport presentation. And again, I encourage, let me say that we work hard to disseminate information. And so it's always pleasant when people see what's going on, and very useful. I get a lot of complaints of people saying, well, I didn't know. Well, I don't know what else I can do. It's a problem mediation faces, is how do you communicate that you can be helped? And there are interesting things happening. So next Wednesday, Southwest Washington Regional Airport. And after that, the risk pool and insurance, that's probably going to be a little bit arcane, but it's crucial. Sometimes what we do here is predicated on, if you don't do that, the risk pool will not stand behind you. You have to do it or you're not going to be insured. And we're all afraid of the jury awards. At least I am. There was one today, right? Occurred at. Yeah, what was it? It was. Yeah, I'm not sure I can talk about it, but it was egregious. And the following Wednesday is Parks, Habitat and Recreation. Who is presenting that? Do you know?
I think, isn't that coming from Melissa?
Is
Yeah.
that going to be Alyssa?
And probably the Parks Board, members of the Parks Board will be here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, I've stalled enough. No hands have come up. No, nothing to do. Oh, well, there's a chat. statement.
And Carol did send a note. She was
Oh,
watching.
yes. Thank you, Carol, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This meeting's adjourned.